Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Grand Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Grand Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Grand Group by emailing thegran, G-R-A-N, group at edinarealty.com or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Grand Group with Edina Realty, 3-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners. On this episode, David and Dan recap the Twins' 2-game series against the Milwaukee Brewers. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win. My name is David Kufis. With me, as always, is Dan Thompson. The return of Miguel Sano brings exactly what we've come to expect out of Miguel Sano. A quick pull, a strikeout, a fly out to left field. Just brilliance from Miguel Sano. The Twins are absolutely dismal in this performance. In 2 games, Dan, the Twins pitchers gave up 16 walks. I mean, that's honestly, it's like they're going for the record.
It's like they're afraid to pitch to the other team. Like, that's what it feels like to me. And you just can't, you got to go after hitters, but it's clear that they don't trust their stuff. They don't trust their ability, I think, to get these guys out.
Well, I don't either, but honestly, there comes a point where you're better off having a position player on the mound and just trusting that your defense is going to make a play. Because, granted, the thing is, at least position players are trying to throw strikes, right? And clearly the Twin starters and relievers have no intention of doing that. They've reacted so hard to the Twins' way of pitch to contact, they've forgotten about how the strike zone works, Dan. It's just terrible.
Especially when you got defenders shifting behind you, they're ready, guys. They got good fielding on this team. They're just not getting the chance to go. But no, it's disappointing. They lose these both. They do give up also 17 runs to go with those 16 walks, and they lose this one. They still are in first place, pending. We're recording in the afternoon, and pending the Guardians' outcome tonight. They're going to be 2 games up, maybe give or take a half game.
Yeah, I mean there was a point though where it was they had scored 8 runs. The Brewers had scored 8 runs in game 2, and they only had 1 hit or something. It was ridiculous stat line like that.
Well, we better start talking about these games here. Let's go to the recap.
Series recap.
Game 1, Dan. Brewers win this one 7-6. This was pretty heartbreaking because honestly, for how terrible the Twins pitchers looked, the offense at least kept them in it.
It did. Buxton has a leadoff home run again. It was 449 feet or something like that. I mean, he crushed that ball. Again, scoring runs is not the problem for this baseball team.
No, and it was just good to see sort of that Tigers rest sort of pay off, I guess, right? First at bat back after having the injection in his knee, hits a homer. It's a good sign. And I do love from Provis, I haven't heard him say this before, but the buck truck, is that what they call it?
I mean, that's what he's calling it, at least. The buck truck. There's so many ucks that you can do, I suppose, David. So have you played the rhyming game with your child, by the way? Because that's a dangerous last 3 letters there to use. In any case, unfortunately for the Twins, they didn't have, I guess, which pitcher could hold a lead right now. I mean, you could maybe say that Joe Ryan could and Sonny Gray, but they had Dylan Bundy on the mound, and he gave 4 back in the second. And the Twins were able to recover, but in the end, they just don't have enough out of their bullpen to hold on to this one.
No, they can't do it. It's Urshela's home run in the 5th was okay, we can maybe do this one here, but then they just couldn't get it done. They couldn't get it done because the bullpen couldn't keep it together. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but Duffy's outing was just abysmal. But we have to note, folks, it's rare that I'm going to tell you to look at a replay because it's so bad, but just watch the walk-off sac fly at the end of this game and watch Alex Kirilloff in right field because he sets up to throw this ball home to stop the runner from tagging and scoring. And the throw, folks, I'm guessing most of you who are listening to this right now could do a better job than what Alex Kirilloff did on that throw home.
He looked terrified. I mean, he did everything right footwork-wise to get ready to make that throw, but then at the end, I mean, that ball probably bounced 5 or 6 times. At least throw it to the cutoff man so he can make a better throw home to try to be even close at all, because that's how the Twins lose after the bases have gotten loaded. We're going to talk about that later. It did not feel like the Twins were going to win this game once they got to the 8th inning and it was tied because of those arms that the Brewers can trot out there at the end of baseball games.
You didn't even mention Eddie Rosario, Dan. I even put it in the notes for you. Put it in the notes for you.
But it was a right field play, not a left field play, and Eddie in my mind is only left field. So there's no other place. One other thing, so it was Luis Urias. That's not Luis Urias. That's Luis Urias who plays for the Brewers. He was the one who hit that sac fly. His brother Ramon plays for the Orioles, and he had a walk-off hit on Tuesday night as well. It was a home run, so it was a little more exciting, but good on those Urias brothers.
Well, and good on the Orioles, my goodness. And they are now in 4th place in the AL East ahead of the Red Sox, Dan.
I know, but it sounds so funny when you're saying good on them. You're not in last place anymore,
the
Orioles.
It's the Orioles. I don't know if you can't celebrate that, Dan, you're going to have a hard time finding anything to celebrate.
Any other moments in this game you want to point to?
No, let's just keep going. I mean, game one was frustrating because it just, like you said, it never felt like they were going to win because they weren't going to have the bullpen arms necessary to keep it close and give the offense a chance. Game two, however, Dan, this one fell apart, not to be outdone by Dylan Bundy, who pitched 4 innings. Chris Archer gets on the mound, just implodes through the course of 3 innings. It's just absolutely abysmal. Twins lose this one 10-4. And Dan, again, games like this make my heart hurt because it seems to me like cracks are starting to show. And I know we've talked about what this team needs to add, but more and more when we see outings like this, it just becomes so much more evident. This team is not going to be able to make a run without adding some significant pieces.
And this start from Archer looked a lot like a start against the Guardians a few weeks ago. I think it was right around the All-Star break, where the Guardians walked a lot against him, but they didn't get those big hits, right? I think the Guardians ended up winning that game anyway. But this one, the Brewers didn't miss, and they made him pay with 6 earned runs for those 6 walks.
Yeah, and they just continued to add runs. It just didn't even matter. So, and the offense, honestly, on the Twins side of the ball was basically quiet outside of Miranda and Garlick. But even with that offense not being able to produce, if you score 4 runs, you should at least have a chance, right? And I've sort of said with this staff, knowing that we can't expect them to go 7 innings, only give up 1 run, if you keep the opponent to 5 runs, you're going to have a chance with this offense. And if you can't even do that, I mean, there's no point in playing.
But also to your point, all of the runs were scored by the bottom half of the lineup here. The top 4 in the Twins lineup when it combined, I think it's 0 for 17 with, I'm just counting them, 8 strikeouts. The lineup did not do them any favors here. Granted, you don't want to ever be in a position where you're going to have to win a slugfest 11-10.
No, and how often is that going to happen though too? Part of me writes that off a little bit. How often have we seen that where the top 4 guys in the lineup are over?
Sure. And again, this was not the game I thought the Twins were going to have a good of a chance to win because Burns was out there. And I thought even after the Brewers had that 3-run lead, I thought they weren't even going to get to Burns at all. They do get the 3 runs off of him, but he still goes 6 innings. And again, you cannot let this Brewers bullpen get the ball with a lead.
No, well, in Burns' line, I mean, he did have 11 strikeouts, so clearly the Twins' offense wasn't up to the snuff we're used to seeing. Yet, last note on this game, there were 2 plays in the field that, again, if you're just watching, this is sort of like what you start to look for if you're watching a baseball team in September who's not going to make the postseason. I hope that's not the case, right? But you tend to relish the moments where there's just good individual plays. There was a play by Polanco, really difficult play. He was playing second. He had to run in on the ball and really in one motion scoop it and throw to first to get an out. That was great. Then also Cano on the mound. The play that he made was pretty fantastic. He had to move to his right, and I don't even know how he got there as quick as he did. And I love that the YouTube announcers, they say, well, the pitchers really practice that, in March and April, but you don't see many guys do it in the season. Why are they practicing it if they're not attempting to do it in the season? I don't understand what you're saying.
Oh, well, at least Cano could do that. He didn't look great otherwise. A couple of runs, made some walks.
Correct. Yes. But again, my favorite guy, Bert Blyleven, right? They're the best athletes on the field.
All right, let's go forward here to the one bright spot for me in this whole series.
Catch 'em all, Kirby Puckett!
Puckett's Picks winner.
Yes, it's true. Unfortunately, Dan's guess about Buxton's knee injection just doing wonders for him, apparently.
Platelet-rich. It was platelet-rich. He's pain-free right now. That's what he said, David. Pain-free in that knee.
Anyway, so Dan wins this one with 4 points, and actually nobody else scored any points, okay? So Correa had 0 points for me. The listeners took Kepler, but then there was some discussion because it turns out that Kepler wasn't going to be available for this series, even though he wasn't going on the IL. So there was discussion with the listener who had made the pick to move to Sano, but the thing is, Sano would have been negative points, so we decided just to keep it at Kepler and keep it at 0, just to at least not impact the score negatively for the listeners.
That was probably wise. Could you go ahead and give the standings here, David?
Yeah, I don't love this here. I'm still in the lead with 13, thankfully. Dan is closing the gap, though, at 11 wins currently, and then the listeners have 7. And is it necessary for me to give the point totals, Dan? Would you like me to give point totals?
I believe it is. It's important, David. It's part of the scoring.
So Dan has 176 points on the season. I have 156, and the listeners have 128. So I don't know what to tell you. This is just sad. I don't like it. I know that I say I'm always going to take Correa, and I do think that that's often the correct approach, but maybe I'm starting to doubt now that there's some other guys who are stepping up.
Well, we'll see. Hogs is going to have a lot of picks here. He's going to be filling in a lot, so we'll see if Hogs can lift the listeners back into contention.
Beast versus bench.
Is losing fun? Is losing fun?
Speaking of guys who have stepped up, no one more than Jose Miranda. There were some questions about him when he came up because he mashed in AAA last season. Just absolutely mashed. Was not just banging on the door, he was taking an axe to the door to get into the majors. He's like, you guys have to let me in. And the thing is, some of the doubt that people had about whether that would transfer to the majors was because he hadn't mashed all the way through the minors, right? He hadn't been this top prospect who you were expecting just to explode once he got to the major league level. But now, Dan, he seems way more comfortable. He seems confident. What a great series. He loves hitting against the Brewers for whatever reason. So I have to go with Miranda as my beast.
Yeah, I mean, he was 6 for 8 in the series, really kept the Twins in it offensively. His average now is up to 281, 799 OPS. He belongs in the heart of the lineup now. He's proven he can hit major league pitching, and he can do it in clutch situations.
Yeah, I think your top 5 should always be, not necessarily in this order, but Arise, Correa, Buxton, Polanco, Miranda, right?
I would say those top 5, and then probably Kirilloff coming in there too. And this is what makes so much of what we're going to say later, I think, important to think about the long term, because those are 6 pieces, maybe not Correa, obviously, but man, that's a core you can really build around in the future.
So speaking of Kirilloff, Dan, who you want to put in the top 5 of this lineup, who do you have on your bench?
Well, I have Kirilloff on my bench for many reasons, I suppose. So he was 0 for 4 in Game 1. He was 0 for 4 in Game 2 with 3 strikeouts, and he had that play in right field. He clearly doesn't want to play right field as much as he wants to play left field, I wouldn't think. It was a bad series for him. He was kind of the one guy who didn't really contribute in either game offensively, so that's why I went with Kirilloff.
The cherry on top has to be the throw that we already discussed.
It totally is, yeah. Who do you got on your bench?
So I'm going to go with Barcher. I don't know if you're familiar. It's actually
That's not a player for
the celebrity
Twins.
Name of Bundy and Archer merged together as one. My goodness, these guys were terrible. What's worse, Dan, is when you're filling out the depth chart for the Twins, you go, okay, Sonny Gray, okay, Joe Ryan, and then you go, I guess we're to the shallow part. There's no more depth. There's no more depth to that depth chart. It just falls off a cliff. This was embarrassing. Neither of these guys had starts or have had starts in even the last however many, right? Archer had one good start where he went deep before he went on the IL, but my goodness, Dan, these guys can't be pitching for this team come late August and September if the Twins want to make a run.
It's really a shame that Chris Paddock wasn't able to stay healthy, and it's a shame that Randy Dobnak hasn't even appeared, it seems, for the Twins for the last couple of years, because they could use these kind of mid-rotation guys.
Give Smeltzer another chance at this point. Honestly,
sure,
I don't even care. Just do something else. Do something else.
All right, let's go ahead to our next segment.
Rocco's Rewind.
So, I don't know if you noticed Yennier Cano's ERA, David, but it continues to be above 9. And he's pitched enough innings now for this team where you got to think, surely there's somebody else who could make an appearance besides Yennier Cano. And I get that Rocco's not bringing the guys up himself. I get that. And I get that the game is kind of out of hand, and so you might as well use Yennier Cano. And I have even said on this podcast previously, maybe you just let Yennier Cano work things out, at the major league level. But my goodness, do you have nobody else to turn to besides a guy with a 9 ERA?
Not really. I mean, not on the roster currently.
I guess
as
that's
it's
the
currently
problem,
constructed. Right? Again, I still stick to my idea that really, with this team, you have just as good a shot throwing a position player on the mound.
I guess so. And I actually was kind of surprised we didn't even see one. I think because there was that 6-run rule, that stupid, silly 6-run rule. They could have put somebody out there, but I guess, again, they got a day off tomorrow, so they might as well let somebody else throw.
Well, speaking of days off, Dan, let me tell you, that Rocco, is there anything that guy loves more than giving rest days to players after rest days? It's the greatest thing. Why on earth, Rocco? You're going against the Brewers, who's one of the better teams that you've seen as of late, and arguably your best player, or at least most consistent hitter on your team, certainly, is Luis Arraez. And you choose, you know what, I'm going to fill out this lineup card. You know who I'm going to put? I'm going to put Miguel Sano at first base. A guy who, by all understandings, shouldn't even be really given this shot. He's given this shot currently. He's given this shot currently because the Twins had to give it to him. That's the only reason he's on this roster currently. If they could have kept him in the minors longer, they would have.
Well, yes, I agree with that. And I will say this. I think it's interesting that Luis Arraez's batting average is 250 points better than Miguel Sano's right now. And they're both on the roster. How is that possible?
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be.
Well, and this kind of allows me to bring up the Sano question because, Sano starts game 1, but then Arraez comes in and has a pinch hitting appearance. So they each had 2 at-bats. But yes, I would agree with you. This is a game you only lose by 1 run. Are you telling me Luis Ariz couldn't have made a difference here in this one game? I think this is the game, again, that they probably had the best chance to win. Yeah. I want Luis Ariz playing the full game here. And Sano he can find his spot elsewhere, right?
The bench is where his spot
Well, I know, but at the same time, you look at the lineup here and you think, well, do you put him at third? Well, Urshela had a home run. Well, do you put him at DH? Well, Miranda was 3 for 4. Like, there's not a lot of space for Sano here. And I don't know what you do with him because you can't start him regularly. It's just not, it does not make sense.
No, I mean, ideally, he could play an adequate third base, but he's kind of proven that he can't really do that so much anymore. And this idea that we're going to trade Sano for something, I mean, again, maybe they'll pay his bus fare. Like, that's about it.
Yeah, there's no value here for him trading. And again, because we talked about how Celestino going down was really kind of the most logical thing that could happen. If Sano doesn't have a good couple weeks here, I think they DFA him, and they might actually be able to keep him at AAA. Do you think somebody would take a chance on Miguel Sano, just sop up the rest of his salary for the season?
I mean, not a contender, right? Like, I mean, it would have to be just some team that wants to take a flyer for whatever reason. I have a hard time believing that Sano wouldn't clear waivers.
Right. So I think that's kind of where we're looking. Unless he can have a big couple weeks.
Yeah, well, I just don't know that he's going to get enough at-bats to prove himself to do that, right? Like, I think he's going to have limited at-bats. He's not going to be able to get into a groove, whatever that even looks like for Sano. We haven't seen that in a long time.
No, because this is a first-place team. With all of its faults and all of its flaws, it's still a first-place team, and it's got to try to keep winning baseball games.
I mean, technically, it's a first-place team.
Well, I know, it is. All right, let's keep going here, because there are moments here we need to talk about.
Minnesota moment.
I don't want to talk about these
Well, I want to
here.
talk about this one. So Gio Urshela's 3-run home run to give the Twins the lead in Game 1, it was one of those stand-up-in-your-chair kind of moments, right? There's 2 outs. It's a big fly to center. You see that center fielder turn around and look, and you think this is either going over or it's going to hit the base of the wall. Those are fun moments that seemingly the Twins squander, because I can think of, well, the other moments that come to mind is his other 3-run home run. I think it was against the Guardians in that 15-14 game or something like that.
Yeah.
And then there was the Luis Ariz home run against the A's that they also squandered. So anyway, but it was an exciting moment nonetheless.
So I'm going to go the opposite direction here. I think I'm going to give the Minnesota moment. If we could assign it to a player, I'm going to assign it to Duffy. My goodness, in Game 1, going single walk, sack fly to lose it is ridiculous. Give the team a chance. I would have rather had him lose the game off a home run. Honestly, I would. Because single walk, sack, fly, it's ridiculous. Because you're putting your team in a position that they are very, very likely to lose if you're going to walk the bases loaded like that. Now, sure, there was a first pitch single, whatever. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's ridiculous. Yeah. It is ridiculous. Give your team a chance.
He looked so good recently. And again, I still put the loss in that game somewhat on the Twins' inability to score a few more runs earlier and Bundy into. I'm not as upset about Duffy losing that game, but yes, I agree.
Well, again, I'd be less upset about him losing it in a different way. Certainly.
Sure. Like challenge the hitters, right? Like go after them and make them hit you hard. Not a lazy sack fly to right that Alex Kirilloff can't do much with.
No. Well, let's keep going here, Dan. Mauer's musings.
I just don't know how it can get any better.
Mauer's musings.
All right, so David, I'm going to ask the Wes Johnson related question. Wes Johnson was the pitching coach for this team up until an awkward midseason departure where he took the job at LSU. And so he was with the Twins up until June 30th when the Twins played the Guardians in that 5-game series. And then he was gone. And in the month of July, Aaron Gleeman was tweeting this out. The Twins team ERA is 5.17, which is 14th in the American League. And every month since April, the Twins ERA has gone up considerably. April's ERA was 3.16. So I ask you, David, how much of the Twins pitching staff falling apart falls at the feet of Wes Johnson and his departure, I suppose?
I think some. I think some definitely from the guys who were effective while he was here. Like, I think each person was impacted. I do think that he probably had a pretty large impact on a lot of the pitchers, but guys who are effective are probably still somewhat effective, and the guys who are defective, for lack of a better term, are likely even more defective than they were.
Well, and the starting pitchers, a number of them spoke out in support of Wes and how much they were going to miss him. And the starting pitching has obviously not been great. There's so many factors to how a team will pitch. But I think at the same time, we've had enough series now. Orioles, White Sox, Rangers, Brewers, White Sox, Tigers, Brewers. That's a lot of series with a variety of levels of talent. I just think there has to be some relationship to his absence. Anytime a coach leaves you mid-season, that has to impact the team.
Yeah, I definitely think there's an impact. It's just really hard to measure what that impact is outside of, like you said, if you just look at straight ERA numbers.
Sure. What's your question?
So we keep talking about this, and it's going to be sort of a constant refrain. But truly, in your opinion, Dan, how many and what pieces does this team need in order to make it to the postseason? Like, what do they need to add at the trade deadline to actually make it to the postseason and, like, make the rest of the season interesting?
Well, one thing I think they don't need is a backup catcher. I know Ryan Jeffers is out until September, but I think backup catchers are just not worth trading for. I think you see what Hamilton can do for you, and you run with it. But I do think they need a starting pitcher, and I think they need a bullpen arm at a minimum. I think those two for sure. In a perfect world, Devin Smeltzer comes back from AAA a better pitcher, and he's that guy that they saw in stretches earlier this season. And maybe Bailey Ober can come back and be effective. I don't know. What do you think that they need?
Yeah, I think definitely a starter. And I think 2 relievers, honestly. The only argument I can make for 2 starters and 1 reliever is if Maeda is actually going to come back and pitch out of the pen. It's a possibility, certainly. And at this point, I would take Kenta Maeda at 80% over any of the guys we have currently. Well, maybe not Duran, and maybe not Thielbar once he comes back, if he comes back healthy. Like, we kind of forgot that Thielbar's on the IL. Like, we didn't even mention that. So that was one other option that Rocco didn't have. But really, I think for sure a starter and 2 bullpen arms, or 2 starters and 1 bullpen arm. 3 pitchers. I don't care about the position players. I do not care about the position players at all. You have multiple options. It's always pitching. It's just every other team on the market is looking for pitching.
That's the thing. And I don't know how much they're going to be willing to give up when you look at how good the Yankees and the Astros are right now. Like, the Twins are not winning a World Series this year. It would be an upset, let's just say, for the Twins to advance through in the playoffs, I think, beyond maybe that first round. But is winning just that first round right now enough to justify?
A game, Dan. I would take a game at this point.
I think with Alcala being injured, with Coulomb being out, with Stashak being out, I mean, they have lost some guys that they were counting on this year. And that's the thing with this team. They're always going to be counting on younger relief pitchers to fill those gaps. There's got to be a guy out there that they could have for this year and hopefully next year. I think that's what they got to look for. They got to look for a reliever that they can have for 2 seasons. And that, I think, is a trade that they might do.
All right, well, let's keep pushing here. Let's grade the series, Dan.
Series grades.
You go ahead first here. I'm not quite in your camp.
It's an F. It's clearly an F. Like, maybe had they not lost the first game in the way that Duffy made them lose the first game, but really, the second game was embarrassing. The starting pitching alone deserves an F. Sure, there's some highlights from the offense. They still failed. They didn't win a game, and arguably that first game, for as close as it looked, it maybe wasn't even that close.
I gave them a D because of the way that some of the hitters performed, because they got some key hits in some spots. It was not great to lose, but you're also playing a dang good baseball team, I think, in the Brewers on the road. I can give them a D here and not an F.
Well, agree to disagree. I think that's the optimistic English teacher in you trying to find something good in something bad. But so let's keep going, Dan. A very, very interesting story for Herbie's headline.
I don't know, Jack. It looked like Herbeck pulled him off the bag.
Herbie's headlines.
Let me say it this way, David. If somebody came to you and said, hey, I want to sign you to a 15-year contract and I'm going to pay you $440 million, can you say no to that?
I mean, even if they said, I'm going to hit you in the back of the arm with a rubber band every day for 8 hours a day, but we're going to give you $440 million for doing that for 15 years, I'd still sign that deal, Dan.
It's nuts. So Juan Soto, and he did this a little bit before the All-Star break. He turned down this mega deal to stay with the Nationals for basically the rest of his career. And then the weird thing was then the Nationals decided that they weren't going to charter him a plane to the All-Star game. Now I get that Juan Soto still is making plenty of money this year. Like, he could fly himself there. It's not that, but there's a principle there, I think.
Yes.
It's a little bit petty, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean... To be fair, though, like, I get it. Like, I know that the right thing to do is to, like, just treat him as if he's still a player on your team and stuff. But I get it. Like, I get the pettiness, like, certainly. And to me, it makes some sense in my mind. It's terrible. It's a bad look. It's bad PR. It's treating Juan Soto very, very poorly. But, I mean, come on. Like to not see this as somewhat funny is just a little sad.
Well, it's certainly funny. And so now the talk is that Juan Soto will be traded here in the next few days if the Nationals get the deal that they want, which is a king's ransom. I think they would want more than anybody has ever received in a trade. But again, it's hard to argue with the guy. He's an excellent player and he's young still, right? I mean, he's still only 23 years old.
They wanted 4 players with a mix of high prospects and major league players. Like that is a lot that you're looking for.
I think they wanted an entire island too, like an island in the Caribbean, just tossed in that they can have for their own private use.
No, they wanted the pop in the clubhouse paid for, Dan.
That's right. Hey, that's a good Moneyball reference there. That's very savvy.
Yeah.
Anyway, do you think the Twins will trade for him?
Yeah. Can you imagine, though? You could have 66% of the best outfield in the history of baseball when you have a healthy Buxton and Soto, and then whoever you're going to put in whatever other fielding position is going to be open. Soto, I was looking at this, but
Nick Gordon out there, that wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, well, all of a sudden the level of competition drops a little bit. But so I was looking at this. I don't know why. I was just looking at Soto's baseball reference page. I was checking out his stat lines. It's so odd. For appearances, he played exclusively in left field in 2018 and 2019. And then in 2020, it's like he had 36 games in left and 6 in right. And then in 2021 and 2022, he's been exclusively in right field. Like
he's drifting. He's drifting over there.
Soon he's going to be selling hot dogs, right? He's like just going to keep moving. I don't understand.
The last thing I want to say about this, look at how good Byron Buxton's deal looks for the Twins compared to something like that, right? 7 years, $100 million with a whole bunch of incentives tied to that. I feel really lucky that the Twins were able to sign Byron Buxton for the deal that they got him.
Yeah, it definitely makes it look a little bit more attractive than those who maybe are doubting a little bit what the Twins decided to do with Buxton.
All right, let's next series here, David. Padres series, Puckett's Picks.
And we'll see you tomorrow night.
Puckett's Picks.
Well, so Hogs will be filling in for Dan this coming Sunday, and then I'll actually be out the next 2 episodes. I'll be in Indianapolis playing board games. If any of the listeners are going to be at Gen Con, I'll probably be the only guy there in a Twins shirt, so you'll definitely be able to spot me. But so Hogs is going to take Miranda, which, my goodness, can you blame him?
Not at all. A wiser person would have taken Miranda last series here, the way that he's been hitting. That leaves you next then, David. Do you have to pick Correa again?
I have to take Correa. I'm going to take Correa. I just think that he's still the wise choice right now. I assume you'll take Buxton, but I'm still going to take Correa.
I mean, as tempted as I am here to take Miguel Sano for his 3 at-bats that he's going to get throughout the course of the Padres series, I think I probably do stick with Buxton. I think he says that he's healthy. They're going on the road. It's a big series, so I'll stick with him.
Fair enough. So right now, just so you know, Twins are still up in the Central. They're 2 games ahead of the Guardians and 2.5 games in front of the White Sox. The Guardians have not played yet today. They played the Red Sox tonight.
See, again, David, first place team. They're still a first place team. How long have we been saying that here? They're limping along, but they are a first place baseball team.
I mean, they need all the help they can get from everybody who's playing the Guardians and the White Sox.
All right, David. Well, I'll send us out here. Folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on Twitter at Min for the Win, and you can find our Min for the Win Facebook page. We're on YouTube as well. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you're notified when new episodes are available. And if you could leave us a rating, that would be great. Thanks for listening, and as always, go Twins.
That'll wrap up another episode of Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, 2 avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.